Hello everyone, Lego Mega 961 here with another video. And welcome back to another On This Day in History. Now before you guys begin, I may do more of these sometime later down the line, but let's let things play out by ear. But in today's video, I'll be talking about an event which occurred 162 years ago in a place called Bull Run, or Manassas as our southern boys call it. The event I'm talking about is, of course, the first major battle of the American Civil War, First Bull Run. On this day in history, the Union Army had their asses handed to them by the Confederacy at the first major battle of the American Civil War. It was on that day that a legendary Confederate general earned his nickname. Named Irvin McDowell had his forces run. There were a lot of confusion with uniforms, all that. So I'm here to talk about the history of that battle and what happened after that. So without further ado, let's begin. Now, in April of 1861, Fort Sumter was bombarded by Confederate forces in South Carolina. Now, this was in the wake of Abraham Lincoln winning the presidency in 1860. Now, South Carolina was the first to lead the way towards secession, and in 61, 6 more would join them, and forming the Confederacy in February of 61. And war would soon begin in April of that month, and with the wake of Abraham Lincoln calling for volunteers and putting down the Confederate rebellion, and 4 more states would join the Union. Not join the Union, join the Confederacy. That would be Virginia being among them, being the birthplace of many U.S. presidents and famous generals and leaders. It became the Confederate capital, with Richmond being the key figure in that moment. But with Lincoln calling for volunteers, there was some confusion. Some of the units that were formed, they didn't have standard uniforms. When we think of the Civil War, we think of those clad in Union and those clad in gray. But many of these guys, they show up in parade uniforms, their militia uniforms, and even the regular army uniforms. Now, mind you, these guys weren't issued standard uniforms. I mean, the government didn't issue them, the states did. For example, the 33rd Virginia Infantry, these guys went into battle still wearing the Union Army uniform, or the regular army. Now, there were men from Wisconsin and New York, they wore gray. Now, there was one unit that many of you heard of called the 7th New York State Militia. These guys wore gray uniforms with black pipings on the sleeves, their collars, their coats, even on their trousers and on their caps. Now, they would have a number 7 on their hats and even the state emblem. Now, think about it this way. You're in a battle at Bull Run, and you got a line of men in blue and gray and a line of men in blue and gray. Who the hell's shooting who? Now, again, these guys didn't have standard uniforms. But with that said, there were some key moments in that battle. Like key moments, like the battles which occurred on Henry's Hill, on Matthews Hill, and the Great Skedaddle later down the line. Now, there were some legendary figures that rose from that battle. Thomas Marr was in that, and General Sherman was in it, and even Thomas Jonathan Jackson, who later earned the nickname Stonewall. Now, how did he earn that nickname, you may ask? Well, it was due to a man by the name of General Bernard Bee. He rode up to Jackson telling him that his line on Matthews Hill was broken and the Federals are beating them back. He told them, "We will give them the bayonet." Now Jackson and his men, who will later be christened as the Stonewall Brigade, would go down in history as one of the legendary units and nickname of that battle. Now, General B, he would tell his comrades that, pointing to Jackson, he would say, "Look, there's Jackson standing like a stone wall, rallying behind the Virginians. Of course, some say, let us determine to die here today, we will conquer her, but that's for debate. Now, the nickname Stonewall stuck with him because Jackson stood like a stone wall. Now, it was there that Jackson was also wounded in battle. He was shot in the left hand and by a spent ball. Now, as for the rest of the boys in that battle, it was also there that they tried to beat back the rebels, but they somehow formed a counterattack. Some of them arrived by train, something new in war, and they gave the blood-curdling rebel yell. Yep, the famous rebel yell. It was there that Jackson urged his troops to yell like furies. Now, the infamous rebel yell was heard on that day. It would soon echo across many battlefields of the Civil War. It would rage from Chancellorsville to Fredericksburg to Antietam, Gettysburg, Cold Harbor, Franklin, and many other battles. Now, with the rebels forming a counterattack, the Union troops tried to fight back, but unfortunately, they had no choice but to run. And that event would soon play out, known as the Great Skedaddle. Now, many of these guys, they just bolted. And with the Confederates hot on their tail, they got artillery flying over their heads, with civilians choking the road. But it was just utter confusion. But how did that happen? Well, many of these guys, they didn't have proper training. The Civil War was all new to them. Irvin McDowell said this to Lincoln when he calls upon volunteers to fight for the Union. Those men are green. For which Lincoln said, "You are green, it is true, but they are green also. You are all green alike." Now, what does that mean, being green? Well, it means they're new. Many of these guys are raw recruits who've never seen battle. I mean, they read about battles in books, in history books, but they've never been in one. And many of us get scared in battle. Some of them would even froze up, some would even cower in fear. Many of these guys wanted to go home. But you can't let fear get the better of you. You need to face them, fight them. Now, with that said, the first major battle of the American Civil War ended in a Confederate victory. And that plan to take Richmond that day failed. Now, there were many attempts to take the Confederate capital, but it wasn't until in April of 65, or even earlier in 65, that the Union would get their chance and take the Confederate capital. Minus the burnt buildings and destroyed supply wagons and all that. So, yeah, there's that. And so, that's it for this video, my friends. And if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more like this, please feel free to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to my channel, and turn on the bell notification so that way you can be notified if I upload the next video. And as always, this is LEGO Maker 96-1 signing off.